G'day guys, Daikaiju Down Under here. In today's video, we will be discussing this guy right here. This is the very first figure that was ever released in the SH MonsterArts line. It is the SH MonsterArts 1994 Godzilla. We're going to talk about its aesthetics, we're going to compare it to some newer figures in the line to answer the question, does this thing hold up over time? Let's find out. So this figure here is over a decade old. I believe it's actually closer to 14 years old at this point. So SH MonsterArts has been doing this for a very, very long time. But as you can see, Godzilla here does have the general SH MonsterArts aesthetic, which does make sense. This was the guy that started it all. Now, this figure here is part of the second production run. The second production run of the figure did not come with the blue atomic beam and base effect for said beam, so I don't actually have that accessory for this figure. However, I do have some other ones that we'll look at in just a moment, but that's the major difference here. So mine is the second production run. If you got the first production run, you did come with a blue beam with your Godzilla. Now, as you can see, aesthetically speaking, Godzilla here is beautiful. This figure looks very, very nice. I've sort of got Godzilla in a general, just half dynamic, half sort of idle looking pose. And looking at this thing from multiple angles here, Godzilla looks very, very nice. So we'll take a look at those details and we'll take a look at that paint job and then we'll compare it to some newer figures from the SH MonsterArts line. Sounds good. Talking about detail and articulation for this figure, guys, for the first Godzilla in the SH MonsterArts line, I actually think it's very, very good. Now, we'll quickly start with the detail, and we'll just take a general look at the figure, and I'll highlight some key features, like that chest there. You can clearly see some underlying musculature with the sculpted scales on top there, and in fact, the same can be said for Godzilla's leg and thigh. Those are looking exactly how they should, with a lot of musculature done underneath the scales there. That looks very, very nice. Same with the spines here. They've got that skin that they should have on top of them, and that does look very, very nice. Those sculpted details are captured pretty perfectly, if I might say. In fact, even on the tail here as well, guys, in between those segments, there's even a little bit of additional sculpt work just to help hide those seams just a little bit. So sculpt-wise, Godzilla is very, very nice. It does look like the Heisei Godzilla. You've got that signature sort of almost cat-like face, cat-like brow there. You've got those dual rows of teeth, which is very, very nice. Something that is unique to the Heisei Godzilla, and I think that is very, very cool. In fact, overall, guys, the general aesthetic of Godzilla is just that of the Heisei Godzilla. It might not be the most accurate-looking 1994 Godzilla from Godzilla vs. Spacegodzilla, but this Godzilla does kind of suit the feel of the generic Heisei Godzilla. So the overall aesthetics and the sculpt work is very, very nice, especially for the first figure in the SH MonsterArts line. Now, articulation is definitely something that the SH MonsterArts line improved on as it went along. So it's something that we sort of got the general feel of in this figure here. I mean, you get a lot of details in a lot of articulation points in the head, you get a giant segmented tail, and these are things that continue for the SH MonsterArts line. However, on this figure here, they are just a little bit lacking. Now, again, you have to remember, this was the first figure in the SH MonsterArts line. So, although the tail does have a plethora of segments here, it is still just a little bit limited. I mean, you can't really get anything out of the base here. You're not getting much movement there, or there. You mostly get a bunch of it in that middle there. And then a big point of contention that people have with this figure and some of the other Heisei Godzilla figures, just the entire tip of Godzilla's tail here, all of these segments is one continuous block, so you can't quite get the perfect S-curve out of there. Another point that people don't really like this figure for is the hips. You don't really get much out, you don't really get much forward, so it's a little bit lacking there. And then same with that sort of chest ab crunch area. Again, just a little bit lacking despite being a ball joint. Now, a joint that people love or hate, you sort of end up on either side, is the head joint here. Now, as you can see, Godzilla does have a bit of a gap on the top there, and you can't really fix that, whether Godzilla is looking sort of down or forward or straight up for that swimming pose. You do sort of get just a little bit of a cut there, and it does look a little bit awkward, but that was done on purpose, sort of, to accommodate that Godzilla swimming mode. So let's talk about that real quick. Here we have Godzilla in its swimming mode. This is something that the figure was advertised for, but it's a feature that we don't really see going forward. At least not to my knowledge. I don't think there have been any other SH MonsterArts Godzilla figures that have been advertised as having a quote-unquote swim mode. But this does look very nice. It's very cool having a sort of swimming Godzilla. If the camera would focus on it, that would be great. There we go. So as you can see, all you really do is just straighten up the neck, straighten up that tail, and then put Godzilla's legs sort of at a backwards angle. And then you get Godzilla in a somewhat swimming sort of pose. I guess he'll be swimming underneath the water, or maybe at the top of the water, kind of like Godzilla -1, I don't really know. But this is cool. It's nothing really to write home about. I don't really think anyone has their Godzilla 1994 posed in this way, but it is kind of cool that the figure does have it included. It's just a little bit unfortunate that in order to achieve this, some sort of interesting choices were made with the head of Godzilla here. So as stated previously, my figure here was a part of the second production run, so it did not come with that atomic breath piece. However, I do have the next best thing. The exact same atomic breath piece. So this here comes from one of those little option sets that came with some military vehicles and some buildings. Now, it's the exact same thing that would have came with the original figure, and it's the same accessory that we would see later on with the Birth Godzilla figure. So it's 3 pieces. You get your standard Tamashi stage arm here. I believe this is in Act 5. You have this nice wavy sort of base effect here. As you can see, it sort of has a wave of energy sort of going forward with a hole for that stand in the middle there. That looks very nice, very cool. So imagine this being blue. This one here is done in clear with a little bit of gold on top of it. And then the other bit, the most important part, is the atomic breath piece itself. So again, this one comes from that set. It's not the correct color. The one that came on the original SH MonsterArts Godzilla was blue. This one here is clear with just a little bit of gold sprayed on top. Now, as you can see, on that part there is some sculpted detail there for Godzilla's mouth. So that plugs right into Godzilla's mouth. In fact, we even have a little bit more on the top there. And then you can recreate Godzilla shooting his atomic beam. So let's do that. And this is what Godzilla looks like with that beam completely attached. It just plugs right into his mouth there, and then of course the beam itself is supported with that base and that stand. And it does look very, very nice. So imagine this being blue, and that's the general idea, the general aesthetic of what you would get if you had the first production run of the figure. For a quick comparison, guys, on the left we have our SH MonsterArts 1994 Godzilla, the original figure in the line, compared next to the only other figure that uses its mold. That is the SH MonsterArts Comic-Con Explosion Godzilla. As the name suggests, it is a Comic-Con exclusive. Now, they both use the same mold, so the major difference comes in paint application and plastics used. As you can clearly see, Godzilla on the right here is cast in a very nice translucent fiery orange in contrast to our standard vanilla colored Godzilla. They both also have some paint differences. The main ones I'll highlight now being just the paint on the claws there and the paint on the spines. Godzilla on the right here has some nice burning orange eyes and some red teeth. But that's about it. They're 2 completely different figures aesthetically. They both do different things in your collection. I just thought it was a cool comparison because they both use the same mold. Now, let's compare Godzilla on the left here to a modern SH MonsterArts Godzilla. For our modern comparison, I could think of no better figure than this guy here on the right. This is the SH MonsterArts Godzilla 1991 from Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. A somewhat recent figure, and it just absolutely blows this guy here on the left out of the park for several reasons, which we will detail right now. Starting with the aesthetics. Now, although they are different characters, technically it's the same character but different incarnations of the character, you can just see the general differences between the two and how the line has evolved over the course of, at this point, 14-ish years. The sculpted details here on Godzilla on the right are captured exquisitely. They're absolutely incredible. That's not to say they're bad on Godzilla on the left. However, you can just see on the right there was more care taken into crafting the perfect figure. Godzilla's design engineering has changed over the years, the more modern figures have taken into account things like gappage and lacking articulation. So gone is the brick tail, all the way at the end here, excusing that guys, every single joint here, even up to the tip that just fell off on me, all of these things are absolutely segmented. So that is absolutely incredible to see that over the course of the line, things like articulation have been upped. In fact, we can see that further here in the hips. Not only do we have improved hip mobility, but we also have joint coverage. So as you can see, there's a free floating sleeve in there. That way when Godzilla has his legs spread in a dynamic pose, something that this guy can't even do, the joints are covered. But you don't lose much range when you close the legs there. So that's just another example of the general aesthetic changes and the design engineering changes that have improved over the line. Also things like the paint on the teeth. A lot of people don't necessarily have the best paint on their original Godzilla here, but as you can see on the left, even though those teeth and eyes even are a lot smaller, the attention to detail and the painted work is so much better. Overall, the line itself has changed a fair bit. It doesn't look like it on the surface, but things have changed. So that's our quick comparison between our old Heisei Godzilla. It's very nice, it has nice detail, it has decent articulation. It did come with an accessory if you got the first production run. However, the newer release SH MonsterArts figures, this is just a general example, but the newer release SH MonsterArts figures are definitely way better. They have better paint application, they have better detail, and they have better design engineering. Now, does that mean that this guy is obsolete? I do not think so, and we'll talk about why right now. So, does this figure hold up after all these years, in comparison with other SH MonsterArts figures and other Godzilla figures in general? Why not? I think the answer is yes and no. Godzilla here does suffer from some unfortunate articulation engineering. The articulation, despite being its selling feature at the time, the general detail and articulation being the main sell for this guy when it was first released, the articulation is a little bit stiff. However, it is there, it is present, and it is rather nice, all things considered. It might not hold up to today's SH MonsterArts standards, but at the time, this thing moved pretty well, and it was nice to see on a figure. Now, the general design, the general detail, and the general paint applications on this figure are actually pretty consistent with future SH MonsterArts Godzilla figures. So I think that definitely helps bring it all together. It does look like he belongs next to your other SH MonsterArts Godzillas, which is very nice. Again, it's mainly just the design engineering choices that really hold this figure back. Things like the head, things like the general sort of blockiness of the hips here. You can't really move Godzilla's hips. His torso's a little bit locked in. But that's about it. Overall though, I think this figure looks absolutely incredible. The aesthetic is there, and it's charming. It's a charming Godzilla figure. It might not be the best Godzilla figure. It's definitely not the most articulated Godzilla figure, but the detail's there, the paint's there, he sizes well with other figures. If you got the first production run, you even got some nice accessories with Godzilla. So I think overall, this guy is definitely worth it. If you can find it, I'd actually highly suggest adding it to your collection. It's just a nice piece to have, especially if you're a fan of SH MonsterArts, just because it was the first figure in the line. Does it hold up? I think if I had to give a general answer, I would actually say yes. Yes and no, but if you really force me to answer the question, I would say yes, it does. The only real limiting factor that this Godzilla figure has is that articulation. Besides that, everything else I think is really, really nice. And that's all I've got for today's video, guys. I've been Daikaiju Down Under, and I'll catch you all in the next video.